Money isn't waiting for you to figure things out. It's already in motion and it's searching for someone who's moving fast enough to catch it. It doesn't stop for hesitation. It doesn't slow down for overthinking. And it certainly doesn't wait for perfection. It flows toward those who are already moving, those who understand that action itself is the greatest strategy. We're taught to believe that success comes from careful planning, deep thinking, and slow, deliberate decisions. But the real world rewards something else entirely: movement. Not just any movement, but purposeful, bold, and decisive movement. The kind of motion that signals you're serious, that you're in the game, and that you're not waiting for permission to start. Every time you hesitate, money keeps moving. And while you sit there wondering if now is the right time, someone else with less knowledge, less skill, and fewer resources is out there making it happen. They're taking your place. Because money doesn't care who deserves it. It cares who moves first. Look back at your own life. Think about every opportunity that ever came your way. Did it come after months of overthinking? Or did it show up because you took a step, even a small one? Maybe you sent a message, made a call, walked into a room, or raised your hand. And because you moved, something opened. That's how wealth finds people. Not by waiting for them to be perfect, but by colliding with those who are already in motion. Action creates friction, and friction creates opportunity. Most people are sitting still, thinking they need more information. They believe success is hidden in another book, another podcast, another online course. They collect knowledge like trophies and mistake it for progress. But knowledge without execution is the same as ignorance. Nothing happens until something moves. And that something is you. When you start moving, even without a perfect plan, you trigger a chain reaction. One action leads to another, and suddenly you're learning faster than you ever could from the sidelines. The truth is, clarity doesn't come before action. It comes through action. The more you do, the more you learn. The more you learn, the sharper your direction becomes. Waiting for clarity before you act is like waiting for your muscles to grow before you go to the gym. It doesn't work that way. Think about the people who inspire you, the entrepreneurs, the leaders, the wealth builders. They didn't get to where they are by waiting for things to be perfect. They started before they were ready. They launched things that weren't fully finished. They made offers without knowing how they'd deliver. And because they moved, they figured it out. They adjusted. They learned. And most importantly, they got results. Results that wouldn't exist if they'd waited until they had all the answers. You can either be the person who says, "I'm still thinking about it," or the one who says, "I tried it, and here's what I learned." Only one of those people builds momentum. Only one of them gets noticed. Only one of them gets paid. Movement beats perfection, always. And money can feel momentum. People think momentum is a feeling that you have to be motivated first, but that's not how it works. Momentum is created by motion. It's a result of action, not a prerequisite. You don't wait for momentum to arrive. You build it with the very first step, even if it's small, even if it's messy, even if it's completely wrong. The important thing is that you do something. Because once you're in motion, it's easier to steer. You can course correct, you can shift, you can adapt, but you can't do any of that from a dead stop. If you want money to find you, then you have to become a signal. And the way you send that signal is by moving visibly, audibly, decisively, not hiding, not waiting, not wondering if you're good enough. You take action because you know that speed gives you the advantage, not mastery. The marketplace rewards those who show up, not those who sit on the sidelines rehearsing their entrance. And showing up fast is a superpower. Now you might be telling yourself, "But I don't know if this will work." That's okay. Nobody does. The people who get rich aren't the ones who always choose the perfect path. They're the ones who try more paths than everyone else. They move, they test, they learn, and they win through volume, not just vision. While the rest of the world is still planning, they're already profiting. Here's something to remember every time you feel yourself hesitating. Someone with less talent than you is succeeding right now because they didn't wait. They didn't get stuck in the loop of self-doubt. They didn't need every detail mapped out. They just moved. And because they moved, life responded. That's how money works. It doesn't respond to potential. It responds to pursuit. It rewards the one who acts, not the one who could have. The idea that you need to be ready is a lie. You weren't ready when you started walking. You weren't ready when you learned to speak. You weren't ready for your first job, your first deal, your first failure, but you did it anyway. And you figured it out. That's the pattern. You move, you learn, you grow. You don't sit still and hope for transformation. You build it with your feet. So here's your wake-up call. Stop thinking about what might happen. Start creating something that can happen. Even if it's raw, even if it's uncomfortable, even if you stumble, you will learn more in 1 week of action than in a year of hesitation. You will open more doors by knocking than by researching door designs, and you will earn more respect from others and from yourself by moving forward than by standing still. Because motion creates results, and results attract money. If you've been waiting, it's time to stop. If you've been hesitating, it's time to act. If you've been hoping for the right moment, understand that it doesn't exist. There is no perfect timing. There is only now. And right now, the marketplace is moving with or without you. Money is circulating. Deals are being made. Opportunities are being claimed. And the only question that matters is, are you in motion or are you still thinking? Because the people who hesitate are always left behind. Money isn't just attracted to motion, it's repelled by stillness. If you want to be seen, if you want to be found, if you want to be rewarded, you have to move. You have to start, not tomorrow, not next month, now. Even if you're scared, even if it's messy, even if you fail, start. Because every second you delay, someone else is already moving, and money is moving with them. Chapter 2: The Hesitation Tax. Every time you hesitate, you pay a price. It's not a fee you see on a receipt or a line item on your bank statement, but it's real. And over time, it quietly compounds into one of the most expensive costs you'll ever carry. That cost is what I call the hesitation tax. The silent penalty for pausing when you should have moved, for waiting when you already knew the next step, for thinking just a little too long while the window quietly closed. Most people don't realize they're paying this tax because they associate losses only with visible failures. They think money lost means a bad investment, a failed business, or a wasted expense. But some of the biggest losses in life don't come from doing the wrong thing. They come from doing nothing at all. When you delay action, you don't just avoid risk, you also avoid reward. And what you miss in reward is the cost you never calculate. That's the hesitation tax. It's the opportunity you didn't take, the deal you didn't close, the skill you didn't build, the client you didn't reach out to, the momentum you didn't start. Think about this. For every opportunity you passed up, someone else took it. They didn't overthink it. They didn't talk themselves out of it. They acted, maybe with fear, maybe imperfectly, but they acted. And because they acted, the result belonged to them. Not because they were better or smarter, but simply because they didn't hesitate. Meanwhile, your delay cost you time, it cost you clarity, it cost you growth. And once you understand this dynamic, it becomes impossible to see hesitation as harmless. You have to see hesitation for what it truly is: a drain on your future. It feels safe in the moment, but safety is often just fear wrapped in logic. You tell yourself you're being cautious. You convince yourself you're just making sure. But underneath that is something much simpler and more dangerous. You're afraid to move. And that fear becomes expensive, not all at once, but gradually, invisibly, relentlessly. Because the more often you hesitate, the more often you let time, learning, and opportunities slip through your fingers. There's a hidden economy running parallel to the one you see. It's the economy of action, a world where value is traded through decisions, where wealth is passed to the ones who move fastest, and where trust is earned by how quickly you can turn ideas into outcomes. In this economy, hesitation is the toll gate, and every time you stop to think when you could have acted, you're charged in full. Sometimes the toll is money, sometimes it's experience, sometimes it's the years you'll never get back. But the charge always comes. Let me give you an example. Imagine you had an idea for a product last year, something simple. Nothing revolutionary. Maybe it solved a small problem. Maybe it had a niche market. You believed in it, but you hesitated. You waited to learn more, waited to build a better prototype, waited until it felt safe. Now fast forward to today. Someone else just launched something almost identical. They're gaining traction, getting featured, building an audience. You feel a familiar pang of frustration. You say, that could have been me, but it wasn't, because while you were thinking, they were doing. That's the tax. That's how it shows up, not with punishment, but with quiet consequences. You lose your place in line. You lose your edge. You lose the chance to lead, and you're forced to follow. Not because you weren't qualified, not because you weren't good enough, but because you paused and the market kept moving. And the market does not slow down to match your pace. The hesitation tax isn't about failure. It's about inaction. It's not that you tried and failed, it's that you didn't try at all. And the irony is that failure often costs less than hesitation. When you fail, at least you learn. At least you gain data, wisdom, experience. But when you hesitate, you get none of that. Just a missed chance and a little more doubt. That's why the longer you hesitate, the harder it becomes to act. Because hesitation doesn't just delay your progress, it erodes your belief in yourself. You begin to wonder if maybe you aren't ready after all. Eventually, hesitation becomes a habit, and habits shape identity. You begin to see yourself as the kind of person who waits, the kind of person who needs more time, the kind of person who doesn't act until the path is perfectly clear. But the truth is, clarity isn't something you wait for. It's something you create by moving. You don't find your path by sitting still. You find it by walking. So what's the alternative? How do you stop paying the hesitation tax? You build a bias for action. You shift your internal default from let me think to let me try. You get comfortable with motion, even when it's imperfect, especially when it's imperfect, because every step forward, even a messy one, teaches you something. Every move you make sharpens your thinking. Every decision becomes a rep in the gym of execution, and those reps compound into confidence, competence, and eventually, capacity. You have to shorten the distance between idea and execution. When something feels right, when it aligns with your goals, you move, not in a week, not after more research, but now. You send the message, you build the page, you launch the offer, you take the step. You stop letting fear disguise itself as strategy. You stop letting perfection slow your pace. You stop mistaking planning for progress. You stop paying the hesitation tax. The truth is, you already know what to do in most situations. You know when something's right. You know when it's time. You feel it in your gut. But your conditioning has taught you to override that instinct. This chapter is your invitation to undo that conditioning, to trust that inner signal, to honor your own readiness, not the world. Because money doesn't wait for those who hesitate. It moves toward the ones who do. Every time you act, you buy time. Every time you move, you build leverage. Every time you decide, you increase your value in the market. And every time you wait, the price goes up, the toll gets higher, and the opportunity gets colder. This is your moment to shift. From hesitation to decision, from delay to direction, from passive hope to active creation. You don't need more time. You need more motion. You don't need more proof. You need more faith in your own ability to figure it out. Because what you've been calling caution has quietly been robbing you. And now that you can name the cost, now that you can see the tax, you no longer have an excuse. The only thing left to do is move. Now. But Chapter 3, Imperfect Action Beats Perfect Planning. There is a myth that's been sold to millions. The belief that the perfect plan must come before the first step. We're taught to wait until everything aligns. The timing, the tools, the training, the support. But the truth is, perfection is a mirage. It looks solid from a distance, but the closer you get, the more it fades. Waiting for perfection isn't preparation, it's paralysis. The more you try to refine your idea before acting, the more time you lose and the more energy you waste. You start obsessing over details that don't matter yet, optimizing outcomes you haven't even triggered, and rehearsing moves you haven't made. And while you polish the blueprint, someone else is already out there building brick by brick, messy and flawed, but real. They'll win, not because they had the best plan, but because they weren't afraid to begin without one. Imperfect action is more valuable than perfect intentions, because even when your action is flawed, you create momentum, you create feedback, you create learning, and that learning becomes your advantage. Planning by itself doesn't do any of that. It keeps you in theory, in thought, in safety, but business, life, and wealth don't reward theory. They reward execution. And execution starts with your willingness to act before everything looks clean. People don't fail because they lack intelligence. They fail because they wait too long to get their hands dirty. They believe that the more they prepare, the more ready they'll be. But preparation has a limit. There comes a point where the next step isn't more planning, it's real-world motion. And that step is the only one that moves you forward. Everything else is a stall. Think of how many people you know who have an idea, a good one. They've mapped it out, talked about it for months, maybe even years. But they've never launched it, never tested it, never committed to version 1. Why? Because version 1 always feels embarrassing. It's incomplete. It's rough. It doesn't look like what's in their head. But what they don't realize is this: nobody reaches version 10 without surviving version 1. You can't iterate on something that doesn't exist. The fastest path to progress is action, not analysis. It's the act of doing, not the precision of planning, that creates breakthroughs. When you move, you collect real data. You see what works, what fails, what surprises you, and what resonates with others. That information is gold, and it's something you'll never uncover by sitting in your room thinking about your next big move. You have to step into the marketplace, into the reality of friction, feedback, and forward motion. Let's be clear, this isn't a call to be reckless. It's not about skipping strategy altogether or launching blindly into chaos. But there's a difference between strategic action and strategic avoidance. Strategic action is when you plan just enough to move. Strategic avoidance is when you pretend that planning is progress, when really you're stalling. And most people are doing the second without even realizing it. If you want to separate yourself from the crowd, do this. Move early, when the idea is fresh, when your curiosity is high, when the energy is there. Act. Don't wait until the excitement dies under the weight of perfectionism. Every day you wait chips away at that spark. And eventually, what could have been powerful becomes another forgotten ambition. Imperfect action protects the spark. It turns it into a flame. Some of the greatest companies, creators, and breakthroughs in history began with a prototype that was barely functional, a landing page with typos, a product that broke, a pitch that stumbled. But those first steps made everything else possible. And the people behind them weren't afraid to look foolish. They knew that the only thing worse than starting with a flaw was not starting at all. They understood that you can fix a bad product, but you can't fix a blank page. When you move, you don't just gather feedback from others, you learn about yourself. You discover how you handle pressure, how you respond to failure, and how you bounce back. Those lessons are part of the wealth-building process. They can't be downloaded, they have to be earned. And the currency is imperfect effort. You pay in action, and you receive in transformation. So what's holding you back? Are you waiting for a sign, a mentor's approval, a market guarantee? None of those are coming. They never were. The signal you're looking for is your own readiness to begin, not because it's perfect, but because it's time. Time to publish, time to call, time to post, time to offer, time to build. Even if you stumble, even if you fail, especially if you're afraid. Because every bold step forward becomes another brick in your foundation. You'll gain confidence not from knowing, but from proving. You'll gain experience not from reading, but from risking. You'll gain respect not from potential, but from showing up when others are still thinking. That's the real currency of execution. That's how you build reputation, relationships, and results. And that's what separates those who live in theory from those who get paid in reality. You may not have all the answers today, but you don't need them. What you need is a reason to move. What you need is courage to be seen starting. What you need is faith that forward motion is more important than flawless beginnings. And if you can hold on to that, if you can build the muscle of imperfect action, you will move faster than people who've spent years preparing. Because speed isn't about recklessness, it's about refusing to stay stuck. You can outwork them, you can outtest them, you can out-adapt them, but only if you stop waiting for a version of yourself that doesn't need correction. Because that version never arrives. The version that wins is the one willing to move now, unready, unrefined, and fully committed anyway. Imperfect action isn't just enough, it's everything. Chapter 4: Speed builds confidence, and confidence attracts capital. There's a direct relationship between how quickly you move and how much confidence you build. Every time you take fast, intentional action, even when it's imperfect, you reinforce a simple message to your subconscious. You are capable, you are decisive, and you trust yourself to figure things out. This internal trust is the foundation of confidence, and once that confidence becomes visible to others, it becomes something even more powerful: capital. Because in business, in investing, in life, people don't just bet on numbers or ideas, they bet on certainty. Most people misunderstand where confidence comes from. They believe it's something you're either born with or something that magically appears once you've succeeded. But the truth is much simpler. Confidence is not a gift, it's a result. And the fastest way to produce that result is to act, not after you feel certain, but while you're still unsure. Every time you move through that discomfort, you send a powerful signal to yourself and to the world. You are not waiting for perfection. You are not afraid to try. You are a person who leads with motion, and that makes you magnetic. People are drawn to momentum. Think about how many times you've watched someone else move with speed and certainty, and you admired them for it. You didn't need to know all the details of what they were doing. You could feel it in their energy, in the way they spoke, in the way they showed up. That's because confidence speaks louder than strategy. It cuts through noise, it bypasses doubt, and more importantly, it builds trust. And trust, whether from customers, partners, or investors, is the gateway to capital. People don't invest in hesitation, they invest in conviction. When you take fast action, you're not just building habits, you're building identity. The more often you move decisively, the more you begin to see yourself as someone who gets things done, someone who doesn't freeze when uncertainty arises, someone who leans forward instead of leaning back. Over time, that identity compounds. It becomes harder to doubt yourself, not because you're arrogant, but because you have a track record, one built not on perfection, but on execution. And in a world full of people overthinking every step, execution stands out like a spotlight. Speed is not just about how quickly you do things. It's about your willingness to act without waiting for every variable to be perfect. It's about choosing movement over paralysis, progress over perfection, decisiveness over delay. And each time you choose that, you reinforce your own sense of personal power. Confidence grows with each bold decision. It gains weight with each completed task. It becomes tangible when you see the direct results of your actions. The sale you made, the connection you created, the opportunity you unlock. And when others see that momentum, they start to trust you. Capital, whether it's financial, social, or reputational, flows to people who are already in motion. Investors don't want to back someone who's still in the idea phase, waiting for everything to be perfect. They want to see traction, commitment, and execution. Even if it's early, even if it's raw. Because when someone sees you moving, consistently, quickly, and with purpose, they recognize that you're not just dreaming, you're building, and builders attract resources. Let's take this a step further. Confidence is not just about how you feel, it's also about how you make others feel. When you speak with conviction, when you pitch with clarity, when you present with enthusiasm, people naturally feel more comfortable aligning with you. They trust your direction, even if they don't know every detail. That's why speed matters. Because speed creates momentum, Momentum creates clarity, and clarity builds confidence both internally and externally. This cycle, once established, becomes unstoppable. Now here's where it gets interesting. The faster you move, the less time you give fear to grow. Fear feeds on delay. It thrives in silence. But when you take action quickly, you don't give your doubts room to breathe. You outrun the stories in your head. You break the loop before it can take hold. And each time you do that, your confidence sharpens. Not just because you avoided fear, but because you built evidence. You showed yourself that you're capable of acting despite the discomfort. Confidence without proof is a fantasy, but speed gives you that proof. It turns theory into practice, ideas into results, and doubt into strength. Even your mistakes become fuel because they provide real feedback, the kind that helps you grow faster than any plan ever could. People often wait to feel confident before they act, but confidence doesn't come first, action does. The most successful people you admire didn't start confident, they built it, one bold step at a time. When you adopt speed as a habit, confidence becomes automatic. It becomes less about whether you feel ready and more about knowing that you can adapt to whatever happens next. That adaptability becomes your edge. It becomes your signal to the world that you are not easily shaken. And that signal is exactly what draws capital toward you, because in an uncertain world, the person who can move quickly and recover gracefully becomes incredibly valuable. If you want to accelerate your confidence, start by lowering the friction between your ideas and your actions. Don't let overthinking steal your momentum. Don't let hesitation become your habit. The more quickly you can move from thought to execution, the more confidence you'll gain and the more opportunities you'll unlock. Confidence is built in the doing. It grows in the feedback. It multiplies with consistency, and every step forward makes the next one easier. This is how you build a life that compounds. So don't wait until you feel fearless. Don't pause for a permission slip. Don't get stuck trying to calculate every outcome before you move. Begin with what you have, move with what you know, and trust that your next level of clarity will reveal itself through motion, not before it. Confidence is not a destination, it is a side effect of consistent, fast action. And once you have it, once others feel it, capital becomes a natural extension of your presence. Chapter 5: Slow Money is Old Money. There was a time when slow and steady made sense, when wealth was built over generations, and the process of growing capital was tied to decades of patient accumulation. In that world, you worked a stable job, saved religiously, invested conservatively, and hoped to retire by 65. But that world is gone, and the people who still live by those rules are losing. The idea that wealth should be slow is a relic from an economic system that no longer exists. Technology, access, scale, and speed have changed the financial landscape forever. Today, money moves at the pace of the internet, and if you don't move with it, you get left behind. The people who are winning now aren't the ones saving for 30 years. They're the ones building something today that can scale in a month, in a week, sometimes in a single day. This isn't about gambling, it's about leverage. It's about momentum. And above all, it's about understanding the speed of opportunity. Slow money may still exist, but it's becoming less relevant every year. The pace of the market, the speed of innovation, the reach of social platforms, all of these tools have tilted the game toward acceleration. What used to take 10 years can now take 10 months. What used to require capital and connections now just needs courage and action. The rules have changed, but the mindset hasn't. And that gap is why so many people are stuck. They're still playing the game with the brakes on, believing that caution will protect them. They're building plans that take decades to pay off, while the people around them are taking decisive action and compressing time. Fast money isn't reckless. It's not about shortcuts or schemes. It's about recognizing how quickly the world rewards those who move with urgency, adapt quickly, and execute consistently. In today's economy, speed is a skill, and that skill determines how fast your wealth compounds. You might still hear people say, "Get rich slow," as if it's a badge of honor. But in truth, that phrase often disguises fear. Fear of risk, fear of judgment, fear of failure. And while fear stalls progress, the fast movers learn by doing, test by launching, and grow by making real-world adjustments in real time. They're not waiting for a roadmap, they're paving it as they go. They're not seeking approval, they're creating proof. And every step they take forward pulls them further away from the people still sitting on the fence. Wealth loves speed, not because it skips the work, but because it rewards acceleration. The faster you move, the more you learn. The more you learn, the better your decisions. And better decisions made at speed compound faster than cautious, delayed choices ever could. Waiting used to be wise. Today, waiting is risky. Because while you hesitate, the algorithm changes, the trend shifts, the opportunity disappears. Slow money doesn't just mean missed profits. It means falling behind in a world that never stops moving. Look at the people who are building real wealth today. They're not just working hard, they're working fast. They're testing ideas, iterating products, launching services, building audiences. They're moving in cycles of action, not years of theory. Every action they take generates feedback. Every feedback loop generates growth. They don't wait to feel ready, because they know readiness is the reward of motion, not the requirement for it. And while others are still in research mode, they're already collecting revenue. This is the new economy. It rewards responsiveness. It rewards experimentation. It rewards action. The longer you take to get started, the longer you postpone the learning that actually creates wealth. And in a time where platforms can reach millions overnight, where ideas can spread globally in hours, and where leverage is available to anyone with initiative, there's no excuse to be moving slow. The cost of slow is no longer just time, it's relevance, it's attention, it's opportunity, and that's a cost few people can afford. You don't need to sacrifice quality for speed, you need to understand that speed creates quality. Because speed gives you more cycles, more attempts, more corrections, and more insight. It gives you the volume of effort necessary to master your craft, refine your offer, and grow your capital. The slow approach may feel safe, but it's often just stuck. And stuck doesn't scale. Stuck doesn't build wealth. Wealth is not about how carefully you tread. It's about how boldly you engage. It's about being first to market, fast to test, quick to recover. And it's about making decisions at the speed of clarity, not at the pace of perfection. Speed isn't about being impulsive. It's about eliminating unnecessary delay. It's about knowing when enough thinking has been done and when it's time to execute. Because if you wait for perfect conditions, you'll spend your life in preparation, never in progress. The old money mindset was built for a different time, one of job security, predictable returns, and slow generational handovers. That system rewarded conformity, loyalty, and endurance. But today's system rewards agility, creativity, and velocity. If you try to build modern wealth with outdated methods, you'll feel like you're doing everything right and still falling behind. That's not a lack to lap. That's the hesitation gap widening in real time. And it's widening in front of millions of people every day. If you want to escape the slow money trap, you must upgrade your tempo. You must start taking action in shorter cycles. You must shorten the distance between idea and execution. And you must build a mindset that values speed as much as it values strategy. Because speed without thought is chaos. But strategy without speed is useless. And only the combination of both builds something worth owning. You don't need a decade, you need a sprint. You don't need certainty, you need momentum. You don't need permission, you need to begin. The real danger isn't failing fast, it's fading slowly. You can recover from failure, you can learn from mistakes. But the time you lose while sitting still, that's time you never get back. And the opportunities that passed you by while you waited, they're not coming around again. The window closed. The world moved on. And someone else got there first. So ask yourself, are you building for speed? Or are you dragging the weight of an old financial model into a modern game that no longer rewards it? Because in this era, velocity is value. And if you want your money to grow, you've got to move faster than your fear, faster than your doubt, and faster than the noise telling you to play it safe. Slow money may still work, but fast money works harder, smarter, and more consistently. The choice is yours, but make it quickly. Chapter 6. The 48-hour Rule of Execution. Ideas are cheap. Execution is priceless. Everyone has ideas. Bold ones, clever ones, even revolutionary ones. But only a tiny fraction of those ideas ever turn into action, and even fewer turn into wealth. Why? Because most people don't realize that ideas have a half-life. The moment you have one, the clock starts ticking. And if you don't act within 48 hours, the energy behind that idea begins to decay. This is the 48-hour rule, a principle that separates thinkers from doers, dreamers from builders, and those who admire success from those who create it. The rule is simple: whenever a new idea, insight, or opportunity enters your awareness, you must take a concrete step toward executing it within 48 hours. Not next week, not after more research, not once the stars align. Within 2 days, or the idea dies. Not because it wasn't good, but because energy and emotion don't wait. They fade. When inspiration hits, it creates a burst of psychological and emotional energy, a wave of clarity, possibility, and focus. That wave is your window. That's your opening to act, to start building, to create traction. But most people waste that energy by doing nothing more than thinking about what they'll do later. The idea lives in their head, not in the world. And after a few days of indecision, that spark is gone, not because the idea wasn't strong, but because the signal was ignored. The longer you wait to act on a new idea, the more excuses you'll invent to justify inaction. You'll start telling yourself that it wasn't the right time, that you need to think it through, that someone else has probably already done it. The truth is, your mind is just trying to protect you from the discomfort of taking the first step. But discomfort is part of the process. And the faster you move, the less time fear has to convince you otherwise. That's the magic of the 48-hour rule. It forces you into motion before hesitation can take root. Action doesn't need to be perfect. It just needs to be real. It could be sending an email, making a phone call, sketching a draft, writing a proposal, recording a video, or scheduling a meeting. The size of the action doesn't matter. The commitment does. Once you take that first step, the idea leaves the realm of thought and enters the realm of momentum. And momentum is what attracts resources, attention, feedback, and growth. But until you move, the idea isn't alive. It's just potential energy stuck in your head. Let's make this practical. Think about something you've been sitting on, an idea, a project, an opportunity. Ask yourself this: what would it look like to take action within the next 48 hours? What small but meaningful step could you take to show yourself that you're serious? Maybe you start drafting the outline. Maybe you buy the domain. Maybe you record the first minute. Maybe you reach out to the person who could help you. Whatever it is, it has to happen now. Not in theory, but in motion. Because once you begin, everything changes. When you act quickly, your confidence rises. You feel momentum. You feel alive. You feel like you're building something because you are. That feeling doesn't come from thinking. It comes from motion. And every time you honor the 48-hour rule, you prove to yourself that you're a builder, not just a dreamer. You build trust with yourself, the most valuable trust you'll ever earn. And once that self-trust is established, hesitation loses its grip on you. High performers move fast because they understand this. Windows don't stay open forever. Opportunities are time-sensitive. Market conditions change. Competitors move. Timing shifts. Waiting doesn't just cost you energy, it costs you positioning. The people who consistently win aren't the ones with the most genius ideas. They're the ones who built enough internal muscle to act quickly, even when conditions weren't perfect. They don't fear imperfection, they fear delay. And that fear keeps them sharp. You might be wondering, but what if I act too fast and fail? Here's a better question. What if you wait too long and miss? Failure can be fixed. It can be learned from. It can be used. But missed opportunities, they don't always come back. Some windows close permanently, some markets move on, and sometimes someone else claims the spot you were meant to fill because they didn't wait. Speed wins not because it's perfect, but because it gives you more chances, and more chances mean more wins. The 48-hour rule isn't about rushing, it's about rhythm. It's about training yourself to turn ideas into action before your mind has time to drown them in overanalysis. You don't need to finish everything in 2 days, but you do need to begin. Because beginnings create momentum, and momentum builds identity, and identity shapes your destiny. Fast action, even when small, rewrites who you believe you are. So going forward, commit to this. Whenever an idea hits you with energy and clarity, respect it, capture it, and within 48 hours, do something that puts it into motion. Not someday, not soon, not when you feel more prepared. Within 2 days, no exceptions, no delay, because the moment you move, the idea becomes real. And once it's real, it has a chance to grow. But if you don't move, it withers, and it takes your momentum with it. The marketplace doesn't reward the one who thinks the longest. It rewards the one who moves the fastest, learns the fastest, and adjusts the fastest. When you act within 48 hours, you get ahead of your fear, ahead of your doubt, and ahead of everyone else still stuck in neutral. That is your edge. That is your advantage. That is how wealth responds. Fast action doesn't just beat perfection. It beats hesitation every time. Or Chapter 7, The Rich Move Before They're Ready. One of the greatest misconceptions about wealth is the belief that rich people move because they are fully prepared, that they make decisions only after everything is clear, every risk is calculated, and every variable is accounted for. But if you study people who have built real wealth, not inherited it, not stumbled into it, you'll notice a very different pattern. They move before they're ready. They take steps while things are still uncertain. They act not because they have perfect clarity, but because they trust their ability to adjust along the way. Preparation is important, but readiness is often a myth. The moment you feel truly ready is usually the moment you've already waited too long. That's because being ready isn't a condition, it's a feeling. And feelings are deeply influenced by fear, by self-doubt, and by the pressure to avoid mistakes. The rich don't wait for that feeling to arrive. They understand that real readiness only comes through motion. They understand that the act of moving forward is what reveals the next step, not the other way around. They trust that clarity will catch up to courage. This is why you'll often hear successful people say, they committed before they knew exactly how it would all come together. They didn't have every answer, every skill, or every connection, but they saw enough to believe in the opportunity, and they were willing to build the rest on the way up. That willingness to act under pressure, to operate in ambiguity, and to take calculated leaps is what separates those who build wealth from those who simply consume information. You can read every book in the world about swimming, but until you jump into the water, you'll never know what it feels like to move through resistance. Many people spend their lives preparing for the right time, that magical window where everything feels aligned, where the money is ready, the plan is flawless, and the fear is gone. But here's the truth, that window almost never arrives. In fact, the people who wait for it often wake up one day and realize they've been waiting for years. Meanwhile, someone else with less knowledge, fewer resources, and far more uncertainty already stepped forward and claimed the space. Not because they were more prepared, but because they moved when the door was cracked, not when it was wide open. The rich move early, and in doing so, they create the conditions that others are still waiting for. Part of building wealth is learning to be comfortable with incomplete information. It's understanding that no decision is ever made with total certainty. There are always risks. There are always unknown, but those who succeed are the ones who get better at navigating the unknown, not avoiding it. You don't need to know everything, you just need to be in motion. Because once you're moving, you start gathering real data, making real connections, and gaining real traction. And from there, what once seemed blurry starts to become obvious. But none of that happens if you never leave the planning phase. There's something deeply powerful about commit. When you commit before you feel ready, you activate a different part of yourself, the resourceful part, the version of you that finds solutions, reaches out for help, and stretches beyond your comfort zone. That's where growth lives. That's where transformation begins. And the rich understand this intuitively. They don't wait to feel qualified. They act, and qualification becomes a result of that action. They don't wait for guarantee. They build resilience, knowing that even if the first move doesn't work, it will teach them enough to make the next one even stronger. Their success isn't based on having all the answers. It's built on the confidence that they can find answers as they go. The idea that you must be fully prepared is deeply rooted in fear, fear of looking foolish, fear of wasting time, fear of failing publicly. But those fears lose their grip the moment you realize that the only true failure is standing still. The person who tries and stumbles is still ahead of the person who never moves at all. The marketplace doesn't reward perfection, it rewards presence. It rewards the people who show up, who contribute, who engage, even when they don't feel fully equipped, because showing up in motion is worth more than showing up perfectly late. Every successful entrepreneur, investor, and creator has a long list of things they did before they were ready. The first business they started, the first product they launched, the first speech they gave, the first investment they made. None of these moments felt completely safe. They all carried risk. They all came with uncertainty, and yet those steps were taken anyway. Because if you wait until you feel bulletproof, you'll never step onto the battlefield. If you wait until everything makes sense, the opportunity will pass you by. Wealth isn't reserved for those who prepare the most. It's built by those who take the most aligned action, most consistently, even when it feels slightly beyond their reach. You don't become ready and then act. You act, and through that action you become ready. That's the rhythm of real growth. It's not linear. It's dynamic, and the more you practice it, the stronger your ability becomes to move fast, learn on the fly, and adapt under pressure. This is the rhythm of speed. It's the tempo that the wealthy understand and trust. And once you step into that rhythm, you start building not just skill, but identity. You start seeing yourself as someone who doesn't need perfect conditions to succeed, just momentum. And once you identify as that person, success becomes not just possible, but inevitable. So if you're waiting for one more sign, one more signal, one more green light before you begin, consider this the permission you think you need. Not because everything is ready, but because you are. You don't need a perfect plan. You don't need complete certainty. You need courage. You need movement. And above all, you need to trust that you will grow into the role you've been postponing. Because that's what the rich do. They jump, and they build the wings on the way down. And in doing so, they rise higher than anyone who never left the ground. Chapter 8. Why the Fastest Learner Wins. In a world that never stops moving, the ones who win aren't always the smartest, the most experienced, or the most talented. The ones who win are the fastest learners, those who can absorb, adapt, and apply new information faster than their environment can change. Because the pace of the market doesn't slow down to accommodate your education. It keeps evolving, and if you want to stay relevant, or better yet, stay ahead, then you need to learn quicker than the conditions around you. We've moved past the era where knowledge was enough. Today, information is everywhere. It's cheap, it's instant, it's constantly updated. What separates successful people from everyone else isn't access to knowledge, it's the speed with which they can turn that knowledge into skill, and then turn that skill into results. You don't need to know everything. You need to know how to learn faster than your competitors, because whoever adapts first gains the advantage, even if they start with less. The old model of learning was linear, Go to school, study theory, get a degree, then slowly apply what you've learned over a 30-year career. That model is obsolete. In the new world, knowledge becomes outdated quickly. Skills that were relevant 5 years ago are already losing value, and new ones are constantly emerging. The winners are those who don't cling to what worked yesterday. They pay attention to what's working now, and they adjust immediately. They don't wait until a trend is proven safe. They explore it while others are still analyzing. And because they learn quickly, they earn. Fast learning isn't about cramming more content into your brain. It's about how quickly you're willing to test, fail, reflect, and reapply. It's not about how much you consume, it's about how effectively you convert knowledge into action. The people who grow the fastest aren't sitting on endless notes and unread books. They're in the field. They're doing. They're learning by exposure, by iteration, and by reflection. And that cycle, try, fail, learn, adjust, is the ultimate competitive advantage. Because speed compounds, and nothing compounds like applied knowledge. Let's make this clear. Fast learning is not about being gifted. It's a discipline. It's a habit of staying curious, staying humble, and staying hungry. It means you're always asking questions, always testing assumptions, always looking for the signal inside the noise. You learn fast when you stop trying to be right and start trying to improve. And improvement requires motion, not perfection. The person who acts on one lesson today will always outperform the person who spends the next month collecting 10 more. Wealth follows learners, not just leaders. Because true leadership today isn't about being the expert. It's about being adaptable. It's about stepping into unfamiliar territory and having the mental agility to find your footing. The best leaders are often the best students. They don't pretend to know everything. They surround themselves with new perspectives, ask better questions, and move quickly on what they discover. And because of that, they stay on the leading edge while everyone else is still trying to catch up. Adaptability has become more valuable than certainty. In business, the fastest learner isn't just someone who reads faster or studies harder. They're someone who has trained their mind to prioritize insight over information. They've learned to extract what matters, ignore what doesn't, and move quickly on what they learn. And they don't wait for perfect understanding. They move forward with partial knowledge, collect feedback from the real world, and improve faster than anyone stuck in the theory phase. This is the rhythm of acceleration. Learn quickly, apply immediately, iterate constantly. It's the rhythm that modern wealth runs on. You've probably heard the phrase, knowledge is power, but that's incomplete. Knowledge is only power if you can apply it fast. Slow knowledge, hoarded knowledge, or untested knowledge creates the illusion of power without any of the payoff. It's like collecting tools but never building anything. In contrast, fast learners are builders. They might not always get it right the first time, but they learn faster than they lose, and that's what matters. Their advantage isn't in avoiding mistakes. It's in shortening the time between mistake and mastery. So how do you become a fast learner in a practical, real-world way? You start by cutting your attachment to being right. You give yourself permission to experiment without overthinking. You create short feedback loops, cycles of action, that allow you to test ideas quickly, observe what happens, and adjust based on real outcomes. You stop learning in isolation and start learning in public. You build, share, test, and ship, knowing that the market will teach you more than any classroom ever could. And most importantly, you stay flexible in your mind, knowing that the ability to let go of an old idea is often what makes space for the next breakthrough. The person who learns the fastest doesn't need a head start. They don't need a fancy degree, a perfect background, or the best connections. They just need speed, humility, and relentless curiosity. Because in a fast-moving world, the real edge isn't being the first to know, it's being the first to adapt. And once you train yourself to learn at that pace, you become unstoppable. You evolve faster than your industry, and you stay ahead of every curve. The future belongs to those who learn faster than it changes. If you want to stay relevant, stay valuable, and stay wealthy, then you must become a learner in motion. Study the patterns, Test the insights. Adapt constantly. Don't cling to what worked last year. Double down on what's working right now. And be ready to pivot again when the market shifts, because it always does. Speed of learning is the currency of mastery. And mastery in this world pays exponentially. It's not just about learning faster, it's about earning faster. Because of it. Chapter 9. Money respects urgency, not desperation. There's a sharp but invisible line between urgency and desperation. To the untrained eye, they can look almost identical. Both are intense, both are fast-moving, and both demand action. But the difference between them is everything. Urgency is grounded. Desperation is chaotic. Urgency says, I respect this opportunity, and I will act quickly. Desperation screams, I need this to work, or else I'm finished. Money can feel that difference, and it only flows to one of them. The most successful people operate with a deep sense of urgency, not because they're panicked, but because they value time. They understand that opportunities don't wait forever. They move quickly, not carelessly, but with focused intensity. Their actions are deliberate, their commitments are sharp, and their energy is alert. Urgency is a signal, not just to yourself, but to the world. It shows that you take your mission seriously, that you're here to play at a high level, and that you won't let momentum slip away. It's not rooted in fear, it's anchored in clarity. On the other hand, desperation carries the opposite energy. It's driven by scarcity. It smells of panic. It clings to outcomes instead of creating them. Where urgency moves with confidence, desperation flails with anxiety. Where urgency invites support, desperation repels it. People can feel it, and more importantly, money can too. Investors, customers, partners, they all pick up on the subtle signals of your mindset. They can tell when you're in command, and they can also tell when you're begging the world to save you. And no one puts their trust or their money in desperation. This is why urgency must be cultivated, not just as a response to crisis, but as a standard operating rhythm. When you live with urgency, you don't need the pressure of a deadline to act. You don't wait for pain to push you. You move because you respect your time, your energy, and your window. You don't need to be desperate to act quickly. You simply need to decide that motion matters more than comfort, and that decision puts you in the driver's seat, not just of your business, but of your entire financial trajectory. Urgency allows you to respond fast, test early, and learn while everyone else is still planning. It puts you in rhythm with opportunity. It keeps you visible, present, and engaged. But most importantly, it communicates strength. It says to the world, I am here, I am moving, and I don't need permission to act. That kind of energy attracts capital because it creates a sense of inevitability. People want to invest in things that feel like they're already moving forward, not things that are still trying to get started. Urgency creates that sense of momentum. There's a reason you trust people who move quickly but calmly. It's not because they're reckless. It's because they've trained themselves to move without panic. They've built their internal engine. They understand that hesitation is expensive, and they've eliminated it from their operating system. You can do the same. You can build a lifestyle around fast, focused motion. You can start by recognizing that urgency is not an emotional state, it's a habit of execution. And like all habits, it can be trained. Start by eliminating the delays you've normalized. Look at the tasks you keep postponing, the calls you haven't made, the emails you haven't sent, the ideas you haven't launched. Ask yourself, are you waiting because you need more clarity, or because you're afraid of rejection? Are you preparing, or are you stalling? Urgency cuts through that fog. It says this matters now, not because you're in danger, but because you're serious. And seriousness is magnetic. When you operate with urgency, you don't chase money, you attract it. You move like someone who already believes they're valuable. You don't approach opportunities with desperation in your voice or fear in your tone. You show up as someone who has something to offer and simply needs a clear channel to deliver it. That posture shifts everything. It changes the conversations you have, the deals you close, the relationships you build. And over time, that energy compounds into wealth. Because people fund conviction, not panic. Now here's the trap most people fall into. They confuse being busy with being urgent. But busy is reactive. Urgency is intentional. Busy is scattered. Urgency is sharp. The goal is not to fill your calendar with tasks. It's to take fast action on the things that actually move your vision forward. True urgency isn't loud or chaotic. It's focused, it's disciplined, it's measured. You don't need to scramble, you need to strike. And when you do, money notices. The richest people in the world are not always the most relaxed, but they are calm in motion. They make big moves fast because they've trained themselves to operate with precision under pressure. They don't hesitate because they know hesitation kills opportunity. They also don't act out of desperation because they've learned that panic makes poor decisions. They stay grounded, urgent, but not frantic. That balance is the sweet spot where power lives. So how do you build urgency without falling into desperation? You start by anchoring yourself to a clear purpose. When your actions are rooted in something bigger than your ego, something that matters, something that pulls you forward, your urgency becomes noble, not needy. You stop trying to prove something and you start trying to build something. You stop chasing outcomes and you start pursuing mastery. And from that space, your urgency becomes sustainable, not an occasional burst, but a way of being. Urgency without panic, speed without chaos, drive without fear. This is the posture of people who build lasting wealth. They don't just move fast, they move with poise, with confidence, and with command. And the world responds, because the market doesn't owe you anything, but it respects those who respect themselves enough to act with intention, move with velocity, and operate from strength. Money listens to that energy, and when it feels it, it moves closer. Chapter 10. Build while they think. There's a quiet truth that separates winners from watchers. Most people spend their time thinking, while a few spend their time building. And in the time it takes for one person to analyze, the other person has already created something real. The thinkers are still reviewing, still researching, still debating the pros and cons, while the builders are getting feedback, making sales, adjusting in real time, and compounding results. By the time the thinkers are ready to start, the builders are already on version 3. This is one of the most consistent patterns across wealth creation. Builders move. They don't need everything to be perfect before they begin. They don't wait until the market is ready or until their confidence is fully intact. They recognize that the game rewards those who are willing to act while others are still watching from the sidelines. It's not about impulsiveness, it's about momentum. And when you understand that speed creates leverage, you stop overvaluing the planning stage and start trusting the process of iteration. Because results only follow action. There will always be people smarter than you, with more information, more credentials, or more experience. But if they stay in their head while you stay in the field, you will eventually outpace them. Not by outthinking them, but by outbuilding them. Every hour they spend deciding whether to begin is an hour you spend gaining experience. Every week they spend perfecting the plan is a week you spend improving the product. And every quarter they lose to caution is a quarter you gain through execution. Wealth flows toward the ones who are already in motion. While they think about launching the business, you've already tested the offer. While they debate the perfect logo, you've already landed your first client. While they hesitate over the risk, you've already collected data and adjusted your path. This isn't about being better, it's about being faster. Not because speed is louder or flashier, but because it gives you more cycles of action, more feedback loops, and more chances to improve. It gives you volume, and volume compounds. The people who get ahead are not waiting for permission. They're not obsessing over whether it will work. They're trying. They're learning. They're taking the hits. And in that process, they're building both skill and identity. Because every action you take tells your mind a story, that you're someone who follows through. And once your mind believes that, you become unstoppable. Self-trust is built in the doing, not in the thinking. Most people think themselves out of progress. They imagine every possible scenario, every potential failure, and every negative outcome. They drown in analysis and call it responsibility. But what they don't realize is that the longer they delay, the more they begin to doubt themselves. Inaction feeds insecurity. The more you hesitate, the heavier the first step becomes. Meanwhile, the builder is light on their feet, not because they're fearless, but because they're already moving. Building creates clarity. You don't gain clarity first and then take action. You take action, and that reveals the next step. You launch, and then you learn. You test, and then you refine. You engage, and then you evolve. That is the rhythm of real growth, movement, feedback, improvement. And the faster you can repeat that cycle, the faster you compound results. That's how momentum becomes magnetic. If you're waiting to feel ready, it's time to realize that readiness isn't something that shows up one day. It's something you build, moment by moment, decision by decision, through action. You don't get more confident by thinking about your idea. You get more confident by bringing it to life, even if it's raw, even if it's rough. And the truth is, the market doesn't need perfect. It needs real. It needs presence. It needs consistency. And the only way to provide that is to stop hesitating and start building. The world is full of brilliant ideas that never became anything. They were outlined, discussed, polished, and forgotten, not because they weren't worthy, but because the people behind them waited too long. They overthought, they overanalyzed, they overplanned. And while they thought, someone else took the same idea and ran with it, and now they watch from a distance wondering what might have happened if they had just started. But wondering is not wealth, action is. You don't need to be faster than everyone else in the world, you just need to be faster than the old version of you. The one who overthought, who hesitated, who waited. Outrun your past hesitation. Outbuild your former delays. Outwork your old excuses. Because once you get into the habit of building and staying in motion, thinking becomes a tool, not a trap. You use it to guide your next step, not to stall it. You think less about what might go wrong and more about what you've already learned. You think like a builder, not a bystander. The game belongs to the one who starts. Not perfectly, not flawlessly, just decisively. Every day you act, you widen the gap between you and those still hesitating. You separate yourself, not with brilliance, but with courage. Because at some point it's not about what you know, it's about what you've done. And what you've built becomes the only argument you'll ever need. Build while they think, and you'll own the future while they're still rewriting the past. Chapter 11. Speed kills fear. Fear thrives in stillness. It grows in silence. It multiplies in the gap between knowing what to do and actually doing it. And the longer you wait, the louder fear becomes. That's why speed isn't just a tool for growth, it's a weapon against fear. When you move quickly, you don't give fear time to build a case against your progress. Instead, you cut through it before it has the chance to root itself in your mind. Most people wait until they feel brave to act. But real confidence doesn't precede action, it's the result of it. You don't become fearless by sitting still and thinking about what might happen. You become fearless by moving before fear has a chance to take hold. Speed doesn't ignore fear, it outruns it. And in that forward motion, fear loses its grip. There's a reason hesitation feels heavy. It invites every doubt, every worst-case scenario, every old story about why you're not ready. But when you take action, even a small one, you interrupt that loop. You shift your focus from imagined consequences to real outcomes. And once you're in the field, your brain starts working with you, not against you. Because fear feeds on unknowns, but speed turns unknowns into data, and data gives you something to work with, something real. Imagine you're standing at the edge of a diving board, staring into the water. The longer you stand there, the more terrifying it becomes. Your mind starts projecting every possible risk, every angle of failure. But if you jump within seconds, your body reacts before your doubts have time to paralyze you. You're already moving. And by the time fear tries to speak, it's too late. You've already taken flight. This is the power of speed. It silences the stories and replaces them with experience. And experience, even imperfect, is stronger than imagination. Fear is not the enemy, it's simply a signal, one that says, you're entering unfamiliar territory. That's not a bad thing. It means you're stretching. It means you're growing. But if you wait too long to respond, fear will shift from signal to saboteur. It will turn your uncertainty into paralysis. And that paralysis will disguise itself as logic. That's how most people get stuck. Not because they don't know what to do, but because they waited long enough for fear to become their advisor. When you train yourself to move quickly, you disrupt that cycle. You teach your brain that hesitation is not your default. You build an internal rhythm that says, I act, then I adjust. Not, I analyze until I feel safe. And that rhythm rewires everything. It changes how you see risk. It changes how you process failure. It changes how you show up in the world. Because speed doesn't just kill fear, it rewrites identity. You begin to trust yourself in real time, not because you've conquered fear, but because you've learned to operate despite it. And that is the definition of power, the ability to move forward, not in the absence of fear, but in the presence of it. That's the mindset of every great entrepreneur, leader, and creator. They feel the same doubts, but they don't entertain them. They move quickly, decisively, and with intent. And with every step, fear has less room to breathe. Think back to the last time you did something that scared you. Maybe it was a launch, a pitch, a message you sent, or a commitment you made. It was probably uncomfortable. You felt exposed. But once you were in it, what happened? You adjusted. You adapted. You figured it out. Not because you eliminated the fear beforehand, but because you took the leap and proved that you could handle what came next. That's how courage is built. And that's what speed makes possible, because delay only gives fear more room to convince you otherwise. Speed brings the truth to the surface. It doesn't allow time for fiction to take over. When you act fast, you move from imagination to reality. You stop speculating and start experiencing. And even if the result isn't what you hoped, you now have something solid to learn from. That's what builds resilience, not theory, but trial. And every trial makes fear a little less intimidating. Because the more you do, the more you, and the more you know, the less you fear. The people who succeed aren't fearless. They're simply conditioned. They've built a habit of action. They've learned that the quicker they move, the less fear has to say. And eventually they stop waiting for fear to subside. They just go. And in that motion, they gain the one thing fear can never touch: momentum. Momentum becomes your shield. It protects your confidence. It preserves your focus. It accelerates your results. If you want to weaken fear's hold on your life, your goals, and your future, stop negotiating with it. Stop giving it space to justify your delay. Instead, create a habit of motion that operates faster than fear can keep up with. You don't need to be fearless. You just need to move faster than your doubts can grow. You need to take action before the excuses arrive. And you need to repeat that pattern until fear loses its place in the equation. Speed makes that possible, and over time it makes it permanent. Chapter 12. The shortcut isn't luck, it's leverage. From the outside, it always looks like someone got lucky. The product took off overnight. The creator went viral. The investor made a fortune with perfect timing. But when you dig deeper, luck rarely holds up under scrutiny. Because most of the time, what looks like a shortcut isn't luck at all. It's leverage. It's the ability to amplify effort, scale impact, and multiply results using tools, systems, people, or platforms that work harder than you can alone. Leverage is the great multiplier of speed. It's how a single decision creates a ripple effect across time, effort, and capital. And the people who understand leverage don't need to move faster than everyone else. They just need to move smarter. Because with the right leverage, one well-placed move can outpace 100 slow ones. Leverage isn't cheating, it's how the game is actually played at the top. And once you start using it, you realize just how much harder you've been working than you need to. Leverage lets you accomplish more with less, and that is the real short. There are many forms of leverage: capital, code, content, and connection. But they all follow the same principle. They allow you to separate your time from your output. You're no longer trading hours for income. You're trading assets for outcomes. You're no longer climbing the ladder one rung at a time. You're building an elevator. The rich understand this deeply. They don't just ask, how can I do more? They ask, how can I do less, but have more happen as a result? And that shift in thinking is where wealth truly begins. Most people never build wealth because they never build leverage. They try to scale effort instead of scaling systems. They work harder instead of designing smarter. They pile more tasks onto their day rather than multiplying the value of each task they already do. But effort has a ceiling. Leverage breaks through that ceiling. It lets you grow without burning out. It lets you scale without sacrificing your time. And most importantly, it lets your decisions echo far beyond your reach. Let's take content as an example. When you write a book, record a video, publish a course, or launch a podcast, you're creating something that can work on your behalf. 24 hours a day in multiple time zones without requiring your presence. That's leverage. Your words become your team. Your ideas travel without you. Your brand compounds in the background. And the more content you build, the more surfaces you create for opportunity to find you. You are no longer knocking on doors, people are knocking on yours. Or take code, software, automations, tools that execute tasks without human hands. A single app can replace the work of dozens. A well-built backend can process thousands of actions in seconds. What used to take hours can now take milliseconds. And the person who owns that leverage doesn't just work faster, they no longer have to work at all in that area. Their time is now free to focus on vision, on strategy, on creation. That's the hidden power of leverage. It frees your time while scaling your impact. Capital is another form of leverage, not in the sense of just having money, but in knowing how to deploy it. How to make your dollars work for you instead of spending your life working for dollars. When you invest wisely, your capital becomes a worker, earning returns, opening doors, buying access. The rich don't just earn money, they multiply it. They buy assets that appreciate. They fund systems that generate. And they build structures that grow while they sleep. That is leverage in its purest financial form. And then there's people, human capital, teams, networks, partnerships, all forms of leverage that extend your reach beyond what you could ever do alone. The rich don't try to do everything themselves. They build alliances. They hire talent. They delegate with precision because they understand that one smart teammate can save years of struggle. One strong network can produce more leads than a decade of cold outreach. One powerful relationship can unlock opportunities that effort alone never would. Leverage isn't just a tool, it's a mindset. So the next time you see someone rise quickly, don't assume they got lucky. Ask yourself, what kind of leverage are they using? What did they build that works while they rest? What system, platform, or structure did they create that is accelerating their results? Because luck is unpredictable, but leverage is intentional, it's strategic, it's designed, and it's available to anyone willing to think bigger than just working harder. The shortcut isn't found in hustle, it's engineered through leverage. If you want to accelerate your path to wealth, ask yourself better questions. Instead of asking, how can I do more? Ask, what can I build once that works forever? Instead of asking, how can I get ahead? Ask, how can I create something that pulls me forward even when I'm not looking? Instead of chasing the next quick win, start designing systems that never stop winning. Because when you build leverage into your life, you stop running the race. You start designing the track. And that track leads to outcomes that would take most people a lifetime to match. Not because you were lucky, but because you were strategic. Leverage is what turns action into acceleration. It's what turns ideas into income. It's what turns motion into legacy. If you want to move faster, build deeper, and scale farther, stop trying to do it all with your own two hands. Start identifying the tools, platforms, and people that can multiply your vision. That's not a shortcut. That's the real path. And the ones who build it are the ones who win, not by running faster, but by leveraging smarter. Chapter 13, the speed of trust equals the speed of deals. In business, speed isn't just about how quickly you act. It's also about how quickly others can trust you. Because no matter how fast your ideas move, your deals, partnerships, and growth will always travel at the speed of trust. When trust is strong, deals move quickly. Agreements are signed faster, decisions are made sooner, and collaboration happens without friction. But when trust is weak or missing entirely, everything slows down. Every conversation becomes a negotiation. Every decision gets delayed, and every opportunity is at risk of stalling out. If you want your business to scale rapidly and your money to multiply faster, you have to become a builder of trust. Not eventually, but immediately. You must understand that trust is not something you wait to earn after years of rapport. In today's world, trust is often decided in seconds. People look at your presence, your energy, your consistency, and your results. And within moments, they decide whether you're someone they can move with or someone they should wait on. So the question becomes, how trustworthy do you appear? Not just after a decade of proving yourself, but on day one, because that perception is often what determines the speed of the deal. Trust is a force multiplier. It eliminates unnecessary resistance, shortens negotiation cycles, and accelerates growth. When you trust someone, you don't need 5 meetings to say yes. 1 is enough. You don't demand layers of paperwork or endless due diligence. You shake hands, and you start moving. And in an environment where things move fast, that kind of trust is invaluable. It gives you access. It gives you momentum. And most importantly, it gives you speed. And speed, as you now know, is where the money flows. This is why the most successful entrepreneurs don't just build companies. They build credibility. They invest in their personal brand. They over-deliver consistently. They show up on time. They honor their word. They make people feel safe, respected, and understood. Because they understand that every interaction is either building trust or eroding it. There's no neutral ground. The people around you are always making mental notes. Can I trust this person? Will they follow through? Do they care about more than just the transaction? And those notes accumulate into either resistance or rapid decisions. Deals are not delayed by complexity, they're delayed by doubt. When someone feels unsure about your intentions, your delivery, or your reliability, they slow everything down. They add steps. They ask more questions. They hesitate. But when they trust you, truly trust you, they skip all of that. They don't need to understand every detail. They trust that you've thought it through. And because they trust you, they move. And because they move, you both win. That's how real wealth is built, not just through products, but through people. Trust isn't built through perfection, it's built through consistency. People don't expect you to never make a mistake, but they do expect you to own it when you do. They want transparency, not polish. They want honesty, not hype. They want to feel like you're on their side. And if they feel that, they'll often say yes before the conversation is even over. That's the power of relational velocity. It's what allows a simple message to turn into a signed deal within minutes. It's what transforms strangers into clients and clients into advocates. And that's the type of energy money responds to: fast, clean, and rooted in trust. Now there's something else you need to understand. You don't just need to earn trust. You need to extend it, because the people you want to work with, the ones who can really move the needle, that don't want to prove themselves to you over months of slow communication, they want to feel your belief right away. They want to know that you trust their talent, their track record, and their word. And if you can offer that early, if you can lead with trust, they will reciprocate. And when both sides move quickly, aligned and committed, deals don't just happen, they compound. The speed of trust becomes the speed of impact. If you want to attract high-level people, you need to act like one, which means you show up with clarity. You ask better questions. You follow through without being chased. You deliver results without being reminded. Because in a world full of noise, That kind of behavior stands out. And once you become known as someone who can be trusted quickly, you become someone who can close quickly. And closing quickly is how you scale. Speed without trust creates friction. Trust without speed creates stagnation. But when you combine both, you create velocity. Velocity is the flow state of business. It's when you move fast, with full alignment. It's when your team, your partners, and your customers all know you'll deliver, and so they move with you, not against you. That's when projects unfold effortlessly. That's when word of mouth becomes exponential. That's when your name carries weight in rooms you've never entered. And all of that begins with trust, not just how much you build it, but how quickly you inspire it. Trust is your speed pass. Use it wisely. If you've ever wondered why some people seem to close deals faster, raise capital faster, get meetings faster, it's not just about their network or their offer. It's about the speed at which others feel safe saying yes. And if you want that speed in your own life, start by becoming the kind of person people trust almost immediately. Not through persuasion, but through presence. Not by talking louder, but by showing up stronger. Your energy, your consistency, your follow-through, they all speak before you do. And if they speak well, the door stays open. And if you move quickly, the deal is already done, because trust is the bridge, and speed is how fast you walk across it. Chapter 14. Done is richer than perfect. Perfection is a beautiful idea, but it's a dangerous standard, because while perfection waits, progress moves. And in the world of wealth, being done, even if it's messy, rough, or flawed, beats being perfect but unfinished every time. The people who win in this economy aren't the ones with the most refined concepts. They're the ones who ship, who launch, who test, who learn in public, and who understand that being in the game now is infinitely more profitable than waiting to play the game later. You've been trained to believe that more polishing equals more value, that a better design, a tighter message, a more seamless process will somehow guarantee success. But the market doesn't reward perfection. It rewards connection, and you can't connect with people through something that only lives in your head. It has to exist. It has to be out there. It has to be real, not just refined, and that means putting out work that isn't perfect but is alive. When you prioritize action over aesthetics, something incredible happens. You gain speed, you gain data, you gain momentum, and in doing so, you bypass 90% of your competition, who are still debating fonts, agonizing over email copy, or wondering if it's the right time. It's never the right time. It's only the right decision. And if you wait until it's flawless, you'll miss every opportunity that favors motion. Done opens doors that perfect will never reach. Think about the biggest brands in the world. The early versions of their websites, products, or platforms were basic, sometimes even broken. But they existed, they were available, they were real, and because they were out in the world, they started conversations. They sparked engagement. They built trust. Perfect was never the goal. Presence was. And in showing up, those brands earned the one thing perfection delays: revenue. Because you can't get paid for an idea that lives in your drafts folder. Wealth doesn't wait for you to get ready. It shows up when you move forward anyway. Even when you're unsure, even when you're still learning, even when your voice shakes. What matters is motion and the boldness to hit publish, to go live, to send the invoice, to make the offer before everything is perfect. Because every day you delay, someone else takes the market share you are too scared to claim. Done creates results. Results create feedback. Feedback creates refinement. And refinement creates the version of you or your business that is finally worth trusting. But you can't skip to the end. You can't plan your way to certainty. You have to walk through the early, imperfect steps. That's where the real work is, that's where the growth is, that's where the income is, and that's why done is always richer than perfect. Perfectionism is fear, wearing expensive clothes. It sounds responsible. It feels professional. But underneath, it's just avoidance. Avoidance of rejection. Avoidance of criticism. avoidance of looking like you don't have it all together. But what if people connected more to your imperfections than your polish? What if showing your work in progress made others trust you more, not less? What if the thing you're afraid to publish is the exact thing that would start your momentum? The truth is, people don't need your perfect. They need your presence. The internet rewards action. It rewards frequency. It rewards creators who dare to be seen, even when they're still figuring it out. That's who gets discovered. That's who builds audience. That's who earns faster. And behind every viral success, every overnight hit, is usually someone who was willing to be imperfect 100 times before it clicked. They didn't wait. They released. They repeated. And the algorithm of the market, of the mind, of momentum favored them. Because done shows up, perfect hides. If you're still on the sidelines, still getting ready, ask yourself, how much is this delay costing me? Not just in revenue, but in clarity, in confidence, in compound effort. How many people could I have helped by now? How much skill could I have gained? How far ahead would I be if I had simply started before I felt ready? Those are real costs, and they're paid daily by the people who confuse polish with progress. But it doesn't have to be you, not anymore. You are allowed to be rough. You are allowed to be learning. You are allowed to stumble in public. What you're not allowed to do, not if you want this life, is to stay stuck in your head. You don't need another week of tweaking. You need 1 hour of courage, just enough to push the button, send the file, show your work. Done will take care of the rest. It will introduce you to the people, the data, the direction that you can never find in theory. The real game starts after you publish. So if you're staring at the thing you've been almost done with for months, the offer, the funnel, the video, the first client pitch, take this moment and finish it. Not perfectly, just finish it. Then launch and keep launching. And as you do, you'll become the kind of person who is rewarded by reality, not just respected by planners. Because you didn't wait for perfection, you made progress. And that progress will make you wealthy. Done is richer than perfect every single time. Chapter 15, Momentum is a Currency. There's a form of wealth that doesn't live in your bank account, yet it has the power to create everything inside it. It isn't dollars, but it buys results. It isn't gold, but it compounds value. That force is momentum. And once you understand how to build it, protect it, and spend it wisely, it becomes a currency more powerful than cash. Momentum in the world of money is not just motion. It's motion that multiplies. It's action that compounds. And it's the invisible advantage behind almost every explosive growth story you've ever seen. Momentum begins the moment you take aligned, focused action and then refuse to stop. Not just because you're motivated, but because you've made movement your identity. Every sale, every conversation, every post, every email, each one is another brick laid on the road that leads to massive outcomes. And if you lay enough bricks without interruption, something happens. Your name starts to carry weight, your brand starts to echo, your reach expands. Suddenly people are coming to you. And what once required your push now moves on its own. That is momentum, and it is earned. People often ask how to break through, how to go from stuck to scaling. They think it's one strategy, one hack, one breakthrough idea. But more often it's not a single moment. It's a streak. It's a series of consistent, aligned, and disciplined actions, repeated longer than most people are willing to endure. Momentum rewards the persistent, not the lucky, not the loud, but the ones who keep showing up long after the excitement fades. Because they've built something stronger than hype. They've built rhythm. In business, momentum is what turns small wins into massive leverage. It's what makes your 5th client easier to land than your first. It's what turns content into connection. It's what transforms effort into ease. Because each result fuels the next. Each success breeds more attention. Each action builds your edge. And if you protect that edge, if you don't break the chain, it starts working harder than you do. That's when your systems breathe on their own. That's when your name opens doors. That's when your market trusts you because they've seen you move again and again without flinching. Momentum becomes reputation. Momentum is emotional too. It doesn't just impact the market, it changes you. It rewires your identity from someone who tries into someone who delivers. It builds a kind of self-trust that no book or affirmation can give you, because every time you take the next step, even when it's hard, you cast a vote for the future version of you. And the more votes you cast, the more real that version becomes. Soon you're not pretending to be a builder, you are one, and your confidence isn't theoretical. It's earned through repetition. That's why momentum is so valuable. It changes both your results and your reality. But here's the truth most people miss. Momentum is fragile in the beginning. It's not bulletproof. It's not guaranteed. And if you stop, even briefly, you can lose it. Not because you failed, but because you paused. Momentum isn't lost by force. It's lost by neglect. The world doesn't steal your drive. Your distractions do. Your overthinking does. Your lack of consistency does. And once you lose that streak, starting again is twice as hard. Not because you forgot how, but because you forgot what it felt like to move. That's why the smartest builders don't just chase momentum, they protect it. They remove friction from their process. They automate what drains their willpower. They eliminate unnecessary choices that slow down their day. They don't rely on motivation. They rely on environment, on structure, on momentum-proof systems, because they understand that the longer you stay in motion, the easier it is to keep going. And the easier it is to keep going, the more results you generate without even trying. Momentum becomes your normal. If cash is king, momentum is the empire. It makes you magnetic. People sense your velocity. They feel your pull. And because they see you moving, they want to move with you. Investors, clients, partners, they all trust what is in motion more than what is in theory. You become someone who carries energy, someone who carries results, someone who isn't trying to convince the world because the world already sees the proof. You don't need to talk about your potential. You live it. And momentum makes that impossible to ignore. It's not loud, but it's powerful. The goal is not to sprint forever. The goal is to build a flywheel, a system that spins without you pushing it every single day. But before it can spin on its own, you have to generate the force. You have to push. You have to endure the slow start, because that's when resistance is highest. That's when your old identity fights to pull you back. That's when everything in your life will tempt you to slow down, or worse, stop. But if you move through that window, if you stay consistent long enough, you reach the edge where everything flips, and what was once heavy becomes automatic. That's where real freedom lives. Not in the grind, not in the start and stop cycles, but in the sustained energy of momentum. You show up, and the system is already warm. The audience is already listening. The clients are already coming. The market is already aware. You're not building from scratch, you're building on top. And that's when things move fast. That's when wealth arrives quickly, not because you forced it, but because you finally let speed work for you, without interruption. Momentum is money in motion. Treat it like currency. Chapter 16, Visibility is acceleration. If no one knows you exist, it doesn't matter how good you are. You could have the most brilliant idea, the most valuable product, the most powerful offer, but if the world can't see you, the world can't pay you. Visibility is not vanity. Visibility is velocity. It's the force that amplifies your momentum, attracts opportunities, and pulls you into rooms you never knew you belonged in. The game changed the moment attention became the new economy. Today, distribution is just as important as creation. How far your message travels matters more than how perfect it sounds. In a world drowning in noise, silence is invisible, and invisibility is the enemy of speed. Visibility isn't about shouting, it's about showing up. Consistently, authentically, and strategically. And those who understand this move faster than those who don't. You've seen it before. Someone you barely heard of suddenly explodes across your feed, your industry, your space. They didn't just build a great product, they built visibility. They showed up in your timeline, your podcast queue, your friend's conversation, and soon their presence became expected. They didn't wait to be discovered, they made themselves known, and because they did, speed became their default. That's how awareness works. It multiplies momentum. Most people fear visibility. They think being seen makes them vulnerable. That exposure brings judgment, criticism, or rejection. But the truth is, lack of exposure brings something worse: irrelevance. And in business, irrelevance is death. The longer you hide, the longer your goals remain delayed. The longer you play small, the longer you deny people the chance to connect with your value. You don't need to go viral. You need to be visible to the right people, consistently. Visibility isn't a one-time event. It's a habit. It's a system. It's a reputation that compounds. It's the decision to document your process, share your insights, and position your value day after day, even when it feels like no one's watching. Because they are watching. Even if they're silent, they're noticing. And when they need what you offer, they'll remember who showed up. Visibility plants seeds that bloom when the timing is right. There's a reason the loudest voices often earn more than the quiet geniuses. It's not because they're better. It's because they're seen. And when you're seen, you're chosen. People don't buy what they don't remember, and they don't remember what they never see. Visibility is a magnet. It draws trust, relevance, and revenue. And the more you lean into it, the faster the world responds. Your value isn't enough if it's invisible. Ask yourself this: are you hiding behind perfectionism, waiting for the right words, the perfect offer, or the ideal platform? Or are you committed to showing up, knowing that presence beats polish every time? The market moves fast. The people who succeed are the ones who are top of mind, not the ones buried under drafts. When you stay visible, you stay eligible. When you go quiet, you go forgotten. It's that simple. Visibility is also leverage. It allows you to scale your energy across time zones, across platforms, across borders. It turns one message into 1,000 conversations. It turns one video into endless opportunities. It turns one audience into a movement. And in a world where attention is currency, that kind of leverage is priceless. It reduces the time it takes for someone to trust you. It shortens your sales cycle. It creates inbound demand instead of outbound struggle. That's not noise. That's acceleration. You don't need 1 million followers. You need one aligned message in front of the right 1,000 people. And once that happens, once your presence becomes predictable, you'll find that people start saying yes before you even ask. They've seen your consistency. They've felt your conviction. They already believe. And that's how visibility speeds up decision-making. People don't need to research you. They already know. And when people already know, money moves faster. Deals close sooner. Results show up quicker. Visibility is the proof that you're in motion. It signals credibility, consistency, and character. It removes doubt. It reduces friction. It replaces hesitation with trust. And in the world of speed, trust is everything. So the next time you hesitate to post, to share, to speak, remember this: your silence doesn't keep you safe. It keeps you stuck. And staying stuck is a luxury you can't afford. Let the world see you. Not because you crave attention, but because you're ready to lead. Not because you want approval, but because you're ready to serve. Not because you think you're perfect, but because you know your presence creates momentum. Visibility is not about ego. It's about acceleration. And when you understand that, you stop hiding. You start building. And the speed at which you rise will no longer be limited by whether or not the world can find you, because you've made yourself impossible to miss. Chapter 17: Clarity Creates Velocity. Money Loves Speed. Chapter 17. Speed without direction is just noise. You can move fast in circles, burn energy chasing distractions, and mistake activity for progress. But if you want true velocity, the kind that actually moves you forward, you need clarity. Clarity about who you are, clarity about what you want, and clarity about what you're building. Because clarity isn't just a mindset, clarity is a multiplier. And when you pair it with action, you unlock unstoppable momentum. People don't slow down because they're lazy. They slow down because they're uncertain. They pause, second guess, overthink, not because they lack ambition, but because their path is foggy. You can't run at full speed into the unknown. Your body resists. Your mind hesitates, and hesitation over time becomes paralysis. That's why the fastest people in business are the ones with the sharpest clarity. They know exactly what they're doing, and just as importantly, what they're not doing. They don't get dragged off course. They stay aimed like a laser. Clarity is a filter. It tells you what to say yes to, and it gives you permission to say no, confidently, unapologetically, and without guilt. Because the truth is, not every opportunity is yours. Not every offer deserves your energy. Not every distraction is worth entertaining. When you're unclear, you say yes to too much. You dilute your energy. You scatter your focus. And the more scattered you are, the slower you move. But with clarity, your movement becomes clean, direct, effortless. Ask anyone who scaled quickly, a founder, an artist, a creator, a leader, and they'll tell you the same thing. The moment everything accelerated was the moment they got clear. Not just on their offer, but on their audience. Not just on their strategy, but on their purpose. Not just on their message, but on their mission. That's what cut through the noise. That's what sharpened their voice. That's what told the world, this is who I am. This is what I solve. This is what I stand for. And the clearer that signal became, the faster everything aligned. Clarity makes decisions easier. When you know your goals, your values, and your priorities, you don't waste energy debating every fork in the road. You already know your lane. You already know the cost of distraction. So while others are stuck comparing, copying, or delaying, you're already moving. You're not chasing trends, you're following your map. And maps don't argue with noise, they just guide you forward. That's why clarity builds velocity, because it removes friction before it even begins. It's easy to look at someone who's moving fast and assume they're just fearless. But more often than not, they're simply focused. They're not braver than you, they're just clearer than you. They've done the work to define what matters, and now everything else is background noise. That's why speed looks effortless for them. It's not magic, it's clarity. And you can cultivate it too, if you're willing to slow down long enough to ask the right questions, because clarity isn't found in chaos, it's found in reflection. So here's what you do. Get brutally honest with yourself. What do you actually want? Not what you've been told to want, not what your industry expects. What does your version of success look like in vivid detail? How does it feel? How does it function? And what does it serve? Then ask, what do I need to say no to in order to protect that vision? What am I tolerating right now that's slowing me down? What lies am I telling myself that create confusion instead of momentum? When you answer those questions, really answer them, clarity starts to emerge. And when clarity emerges, speed follows. Clarity also simplifies your communication. When you know exactly what you're about, you stop over-explaining. Your pitch sharpens, your content lands, your audience listens, because clarity cuts through noise not just in your mind, but in the marketplace. And people trust clarity. They buy from clarity. They align with clarity, because in a world full of uncertainty, confidence stands out. And nothing is more confident than someone who knows who they are and where they're going. Don't confuse activity with direction. You can hustle your way into exhaustion, but without clarity, you'll just burn rubber in place. That's not momentum. That's stagnation dressed as effort. It's not enough to be moving. You need to be moving towards something intentional, something real. Clarity gives your actions meaning. It turns tasks into progress. It turns hustle into harvest. And the clearer your target, the faster your results. You don't need 1,000 strategies. You need one plan, executed with relentless clarity, because the world will try to pull you in every direction, especially when you start winning. But clarity will keep you grounded. Clarity will remind you why you started. Clarity will tell you when to pivot, when to pause, and when to push harder. It's not a luxury, it's your steering wheel. Without it, speed becomes dangerous. With it, speed becomes destiny. And your path becomes clear, not because it was easy, but because you decided to define it. Chapter 18, Energy Pays More Than Time. You've been told to trade time for money. Show up, punch in, stay busy, and eventually you'll get paid. But time is not the most valuable thing you bring to the table. It never was. In the new economy, the fast one, the one that pays exponentially, it's not your hours that get rewarded, it's your energy. Because time measures presence, but energy measures power. And in the game of speed and wealth, power always wins. Two people can work the same number of hours. One barely moves the needle. The other transforms a business, launches an idea, closes a client, and changes their future, all before lunch, same time. Radically different results. The difference isn't effort, it's energy. Energy is the currency of outcomes. High-energy people compress value into shorter windows. They radiate urgency, intention, and clarity. And the world responds to that with speed and money. Because money flows to intensity, not to idling. When you raise your energy, you raise your income ceiling. Not because you're working harder, but because you're more alive, more decisive, and more contagious. Energy attracts. It communicates long before your words do. When your energy is sharp, focused, and fully committed, people feel it. They trust it. They follow it. Clients don't just buy your offer, they buy your certainty. They buy your conviction. And conviction is always powered by energy, not just logic. That's why a 5-minute pitch can close a 5-figure deal when the energy is right. Most people try to scale by adding more hours, more meetings, more effort. But effort without energetic alignment just burns you out. It gives the illusion of movement, but not the momentum. You can't out-hustle bad energy. You can't schedule your way out of stagnation. What you need is alignment. Physical, mental, emotional. When those three line up, your productivity triples without working longer. Because you're no longer dragging your body through your schedule. Your energy is leading the way. Energy is a magnet. It pulls people in. It opens doors. It makes conversations feel electric and ideas feel. When you bring that energy into a room, you change the room. You elevate the call, the offer, the team. High energy is not just charisma, it's clarity expressed at full volume. And clarity, when combined with intensity, becomes a financial weapon. That's why those who master their energy don't compete, they dominate. Here's the truth. Energy is scalable. You can train it, you can shape it, you can rebuild it after burnout, and you can protect it before it's drained. But you have to take it seriously. Your morning routine, your nutrition, your sleep, your environment, they're not side notes. They're your financial foundation. Because if you wake up sluggish, you sell sluggish. If you're mentally foggy, your message will be too. And if you treat your energy casually, your results will reflect it. Your energy is your edge. Protect it like equity. Think about your best days, the ones where everything clicked, where the conversations flowed, where the ideas landed, where time felt irrelevant. You weren't just on the clock, you were in your zone. You were in alignment. That's not luck, that's energy. And the more you understand how to create it on demand, the more control you gain over your output, your reputation, and your revenue. Money doesn't just chase skill, it chases state. The state you show up in defines how people experience you and how fast they pay you. When your energy is high, people buy faster. Low energy creates friction. It slows down decisions. It weakens trust. It confuses your audience. You might be saying the right words, but if your energy isn't behind them, people will feel the disconnect, and they won't move. They won't buy. They won't believe. Energy is the silent salesman, and if it's not aligned, your pitch doesn't land. That's why tired marketers don't convert. That's why burned-out leaders lose teams. To grow faster, you don't need more to-do lists. You need more energy rituals, habits that elevate your body, your brain, and your presence. This isn't about caffeine or hype. It's about conscious preparation. Your pre-call routine, your content creation environment, your end-of-day shutdown sequence. Treat these like you would a financial investment. Because they are. They buy you speed. They buy you clarity. They buy you revenue. Energy is never neutral. It's either fueling your goals or draining them. And don't confuse energy with volume. It's not about being loud. It's about being clear, certain, and alive. Introverts can have powerful energy. So can creatives, analysts, and quiet builders. It's not about your personality. It's about your presence. The way you show up, the level of ownership in your voice, the depth of connection in your attention. That's energy. And that's what moves markets. Time might be finite, but energy, when optimized, becomes infinite. So if you want to scale faster, don't just ask, how can I make more time? Ask, how can I elevate my energy? What would happen if every room you entered felt sharper because of you? What if every meeting, post, or pitch carried undeniable momentum just because your energy made it impossible to ignore? That's not a dream. That's a decision. You can create that energy. You can live in that frequency. You can build your life and business at that level, because energy pays more than time. And when you finally understand that, you'll stop measuring your day in hours and start measuring it in impact. Chapter 19: Chaos Slows Money Down. Money doesn't flow toward confusion. It flows toward clarity, structure, and direction. If your life, your business, or your mind is in chaos, don't be surprised when wealth hesitates. Because money doesn't like mess. And in a world moving faster every day, disorder isn't just inefficient, it's expensive. Chaos slows deals, it weakens decision-making, it clouds value, and it makes you harder to trust. You don't need to be a minimalist monk to attract wealth, but you do need order, systems, rhythms, repeatable processes. These are not boring. They're not restrictive. They're what allows speed to scale. When you're constantly reinventing the wheel, second-guessing your workflow, or reacting at dist of leading, you drain energy and lose time. And in the game of speed, time and energy are everything. Without structure, your effort gets scattered. And scattered effort doesn't compound. There's a reason high performers obsess over their calendar, their environment, their team roles. They understand that every ounce of disorganization creates drag. Every unanswered message, every vague task, every cluttered desktop. It's not harmless. It's a tax on your momentum. And enough taxes stacked together will bankrupt your progress. Chaos doesn't announce itself loudly. It sneaks in. It hides in skipped routines and postponed decisions. It lives in your inbox, your habits, your tolerance for it's fine for now. But eventually it slows you down. And what slows you costs you. Wealth loves systems, not because systems are sexy, but because they're sustainable. A system is just a promise you've made to your future self. This is how we move. This is how we decide. This is how we show up. And when systems replace chaos, everything becomes faster. Not because you try harder, but because friction is gone. You stop resolving the same problems. You stop chasing your tail. You start building momentum that sticks. That's when the money starts catching up. Think about the people you trust with your money. You don't just want passion, you want process. You want someone who has a clear, predictable approach. You want to know they can handle growth without falling apart. The market sees you the same way. If you can't handle a few $1,000s without stress, why would it give you $1 million? If you drop balls at a small scale, why would anyone believe you can manage more? Money follows the organized not because they're perfect, but because they're ready. This doesn't mean your life needs to be spotless, but it does mean the core parts of your business, your message, your sales process, your delivery, needs structure. You need to be clear on how money comes in, how clients are served, and how attention is captured. If those things are murky, everything slows down. Chaos kills confidence, not just yours, but your audience's. And without confidence, transactions stall. Decisions take longer. Growth becomes guesswork. But when clarity replaces chaos, momentum returns. Let's talk about digital chaos. Your tabs, your files, your workflows. It might feel harmless. A few scattered notes, a messy desktop, an inbox overflowing. But every piece of digital clutter is a micro speed bump. It slows your access, it weakens your focus, and over time, it costs you thousands in lost opportunity. Clean your workspace, organize your assets, standardize your templates. These aren't chores, they're accelerators. Because when your environment is clear, your execution becomes clean. Even mental chaos can hold you back. The constant loops, the second guessing, the open tabs in your mind that never get closed. Every unmade decision is weight, every vague goal is drag, and every unprocessed frustration is friction. You can't scale with a mind full of noise. You need clarity. You need to journal, to think in clean sentences, to know what you're solving and why it matters. Mental organization is not a luxury, it's a requirement for speed. Sometimes the fastest thing you can do isn't to hustle harder, it's to pause and sort things out, to simplify, to cut what doesn't belong, to automate what repeats, to delegate what distracts. That's not laziness, that's leadership. And it's how you create a foundation that can carry real wealth. Chaos screams, "I'm not ready." Order whispers, "Try me." And the market listens more closely than you think. Your systems speak before you do. We live in a world obsessed with speed, but speed built on chaos collapses. It burns out teams. It ruins reputations. It creates short-term wins and long-term exhaustion. You don't want speed alone. You want sustainable speed. And that comes from creating an ecosystem that supports it, where you don't need to think about every step, where good decisions happen by default, where your time and focus are protected by design. That's what order does, and that's why money trusts. So if you've been wondering why things feel heavy, if you've been working hard but nothing's really moving, if you've got ambition but no acceleration, look around, look at your systems, look at your routines, look at your standards. Are they tight or are they leaking your energy? Are they built for growth or just barely surviving today? You don't need to burn out to break through. You need to clean up, because chaos slows money down and you're building for speed. Chapter 20. Speed is the language of wealth. Wealth doesn't speak in delay. It doesn't wait for you to feel ready. It doesn't reward overthinking, perfectionism, or hesitation. Wealth responds to movement, and its native language is speed. If you've ever wondered why some people rise so quickly while others struggle for years, the answer often isn't talent. It's not intelligence. It's not even strategy. It's speed. They move fast. They decide quickly. They act boldly. And because of that, the world responds. Speed isn't just about doing things fast. It's about making decisions before the opportunity expires. In today's world, the shelf life of opportunity is shrinking. The window opens and closes faster than it ever has. If you wait, it's gone. Not because you weren't capable, but because you weren't ready. And readiness is not a feeling. It's a decision. The wealthy don't wait for certainty. They move with conviction. And in moving, they create momentum. That momentum becomes their magnet. It pulls results into their orbit. People often say, "But what if I'm not ready?" Let me be clear. Readiness is a myth. No one ever feels completely ready to take the leap that changes everything. But wealthy people don't rely on readiness. They rely on movement. They trust that speed solves more than planning ever could. They know the first step doesn't have to be perfect, it just has to be taken. The more you delay, the heavier your goals become. The more you hesitate, the more distant wealth feels. But the moment you start moving, everything changes. The right people show up, the right doors open, the path reveals itself, because speed unlocks clarity, not the other way around. Speed doesn't mean recklessness. It means decisiveness. It means trusting yourself enough to move with urgency, even when you don't have every detail. It means committing before comfort. It means acting on alignment, not anxiety. You don't get wealthy by waiting. You get wealthy by building, and building requires velocity, not someday, today, not next quarter, now. Every day you wait is a cost, not just in time but in compounded opportunity. Wealth is built through compounding not just of money, but of action. One fast move creates 10 new doors. One email leads to 5 calls. One offer creates 10 clients. One idea published leads to an investor reaching out. This is the nature of speed. It doesn't just move you forward, it multiplies your outcomes. But only if you're moving, only if you're in the game, only if you're acting while others are still planning. Speed sends a signal, I'm serious, and the market listens. Look around at the people you admire. Chances are they didn't wait. They shipped when it was rough. They launched before they had it all figured out. They said yes to big moves before they had all the money, the team, or the confidence. But because they moved, they got better. They figured it out. They earned the clarity that everyone else waited for. The ones who move fast don't just get ahead, they stay ahead, because speed builds the lead. And once you have the lead, momentum carries you further than talent alone ever could. Speed is not a phase, it's a lifestyle. You have to build your business, your brand, and your identity around fast feedback loop. Stop waiting for perfection. Stop polishing the 10th draft. Publish, ship, launch, test, learn, do it again, but do it quicker. Because while you wait, someone else is already taking your spot. Someone else is showing up. Someone else is visible. Someone else is making the money you were too hesitant to claim. This isn't about stress. It's about urgency. It's about honoring your vision with action, not delay. Speed is how the world knows you're ready. When you move fast, the world moves with you. People respect urgency. They trust momentum. They want to be around the person who doesn't stall, who doesn't wobble, who doesn't need a committee to move forward. They want to follow someone who leads with action, and leadership, in its purest form, is speed in service of vision. The vision gets clearer with every step, but the step has to come first. So take it. Today, don't wait to be more ready. You're ready enough. Speed will take care of the rest. Understand this. Money doesn't wait for you to feel secure. It flows to the ones who are willing to dance with discomfort. The ones who say yes to momentum before the path is paved. The ones who don't need certainty to move because they've built a habit of movement. You don't have to be reckless, but you do have to move with power. You do have to act when the window is open, because windows close, and wealth rewards the one who makes the jump while others are still staring through the glass. Speed is the proof that you believe. The market is fast. Money moves fast. Attention shifts fast. And the only way to keep up is to stop waiting for slow, safe, perfect. Fast beats perfect. Always. And when you learn to live in that truth, you'll operate on a new frequency. One where opportunities chase you, doors swing open, and wealth begins to scale without resistance. Not because you found a secret, but because you finally spoke the right language. The language of urgency, of decisiveness, of momentum. The language of wealth, the language of speed.